Let's get more on this story. I want to bring in Daniel Levy, president of the U.S. Middle East Project and was also a senior advisor in the Israeli Prime Minister's office during the government of Ehud Barak, a well-known face on the show. Daniel, good to have you on the show, to have you back. We have been playing out, as you've probably seen, huge moments, huge scenes of celebration and relief, of course, from Gaza to Israel. But there's also a lot of caution, as you can imagine, Daniel, and a lot of cynicism because there are huge gaps in this 20-point plan over the next phase. There's a lot we do not know, and I think our correspondents have made that clear. So let me ask you this to start off from what you've seen. Is this the beginning of the end, Daniel?
If I flip that, we may be closer, Isa. It could be the end of the beginning. In other words, can this get us a ceasefire in Gaza that, and I'm going to add the caveat, is more or less sustainable? Can we see a situation where Palestinians in Gaza look up to the sky and they don't see attack drones, they don't see fighter jets, they don't see artillery bombs coming down on them, get aid in, no longer mass killing, displacement all the time? Possible. Will those Israelis get out of Gaza, be welcomed home by their families? Possible. Probable, both of those things. Palestinian prisoners being released. There are still details of that which need to be closed. And here's the caveat, even on a day where there is the potential for great relief. The caveat is that there is no clear pathway for Israel to fully militarily withdraw from Gaza. Netanyahu has said he won't do that. I think it is unlikely that under these circumstances, when you also have the continuation of the occupation, Hamas will disarm. I think it's unlikely that you will get the kind of Palestinian governance you need. There's the attempt to impose, including the former prime minister in this country, Tony Blair, impose some kind of colonial governance. And we haven't even mentioned, and the 20 points don't mention, the West Bank, where the theft of Palestinian land, where the attacks on Palestinians are relentless. So we're really barely at the start line of peace. We may be nearing the finishing line of this genocide.
Yeah, and look, as you were talking, we're just hearing that the Security Cabinet meeting in Israel has concluded, and now the government will now begin its meeting shortly for the wider Knesset. We don't know whether it's passed, or we heard from our Jeremy Diamond that suspect, of course, that it will go through. But what we heard today, Daniel, was that Hamas had said, and I'm not sure whether you saw this, that they wanted a formal declaration in ending the Gaza war. They're saying it's required for a hostage release to happen. And I suspect this is because they are concerned, like we've heard from so many, that once the hostages are released, that Netanyahu will renegade on the promises and won't pull out his troops. Do you think that Israel will provide that formal declaration, or do you think that will come potentially from President Trump, pressure from President Trump? How do you see the next stages here?
Yeah, the missing piece, of course, is what does a guarantee look like, right? We've been here before. Israel has broken the ceasefires in the past. I don't think there is a guarantee. So I think what you're getting is what I would call maximum plausibility. That is the best you will get. If that is on the table, Hamas may still have a decision to make in terms of moving forward, especially since one can assume almost that whatever the line of Israel's withdrawal is on the day the hostages are released, further withdrawal is going to be unlikely. What kind of guarantees can there at least be to get the humanitarian aid in? Remember, the starvation policy is of more recent vintage, but the blockade on Gaza stretches back almost 18 years. So there is not going to be a guarantee. I think there is this inability, really, to go along with the idea of trust me when it comes from Trump. I think the Arab and regional mediating parties are saying, look, we've shown that we have good traction with this president. It's not January. We're now in October. Look how well we've managed to move things forward with him. Will they put that at the disposal of the Palestinians? All that is very open. And I would probably therefore suggest that while we're obsessing around Trump's role, and that role has been important, don't forget the role of something else, which is pressure. Netanyahu did not like, and the Israeli people did not like this idea, and he used this word, that isolation was coming. Trump said, hey, you're more popular now. So I think that unless pressure is maintained, if we go back to impunity, if there is not accountability, remember, this is genocide. You don't simply turn a page on that. Netanyahu has an arrest warrant against his name. I'm not saying he gets arrested tomorrow, but you will have to maintain pressure on Israel. And if it's not going to be done by the US, it might have to be done by people on the streets in Europe and elsewhere, making sure their governments are pushed, because otherwise we will slip back into the insecurity of permanent occupation and apartheid. And we don't want to see this again.
What I'm hearing from you, Daniel, is not so much a commitment to end the war, from what you're saying, but almost a commitment to pause the war. That's what I'm hearing from you in terms of what this is likely to achieve. And it brings me to what I've heard, what I read today from Gershom Baskin, writing the Times of Israel. He said, what we should also know is that this deal could have been done a long time ago. Hamas agreed to all the same terms in 2024, as outlined in the 3 weeks deal that I received in both written and voice messages in Arabic and English. But at that point, the Israeli negotiators responded that the Prime Minister did not agree to end the war. So why now? Why only now? What is different? Is it that pressure that you were talking about there, Daniel, from the United States? And of course, how do we make sure that that pressure continues in phase 2 of this deal?
So, first of all, of course, the war isn't ended because the occupation continues, and that is an act of war. So Israel's acts of war against the Palestinians and violations of international law will be in place the minute after this ceasefire goes into effect, if it indeed goes into effect. Why now? I would differ slightly. Yes, there was a deal available. It might not be exactly the same as this deal, but Netanyahu has given himself a 2-year lease of life in office. He's managed to replace some of the military chiefs. He's halfway through the firing of the Attorney General. He has gotten, I think, the ability to get the American president to support the ending of his trial. So he is much further along a political path that was important to him. And he has delivered for his far-right party and coalition members on the destruction of Gaza, on the obliteration of Gaza. And he has therefore set a precedent, the precedent that mass displacement, that this kind of carnage is possible unless he is held to account. So I don't think it's quite so simple to say this deal could have been done. Yes, it could have been done, but that misreads what the Israeli body politic is about right now, having manufactured public consent for this kind of cruelty. And that will have to be reversed. Israelis and Palestinians are going to live on this land, and they will either live on this land bleeding, or they will live on this land where both have equal rights with dignity.
Daniel Levy, always great to get your insight. Thanks very much, Daniel. Really appreciate you coming on.